Yeah. Let me open up my files here. And close that, close that. So we did, I think we are being recorded. Okay, so we have 1 minute to the start. And we'll put up the Chrome so that we can do the cyber campus. I have to put this set up so that okay. All right, so let's go to www.cuk.ac.kr and English. And we go to Cyber Campus and we go to Yongo and log in and enter my login information. So your midterm, of course, is due tomorrow morning, your first draft. And so let me go to methodology and go to, is it 11 o'clock? Yes, it's 11 o'clock. So we go to attendance, week 7, go add smart attendance, and your smart attendance number is 374. 374 is your smart attendance number, 374. So we go to chatting and type in 374. And there you go. There's your smart attendance number. And yeah, I was thinking, you know, as I rushed to prepare the questions for Wednesday's class, as we were talking about what should be in terms of your survey instrument to interview 2 international students studying in college here in South Korea, you know, it would seem to be pretty wise to put something in there about the pandemic, like what has been the impact of the pandemic in terms of your experience. And you know, that's not in Trompenar's and Hampton Turner's questions, of course, but the Trompenar's and Hampton Turner list of questions or scenarios that they cover in their chapters is to illustrate differences in cultures. So, of course, you can imagine how maybe you can come up with some kind of pandemic, COVID-19, coronavirus pandemic related questions, but you know, in terms of how you might use those kinds of questions to evaluate cultural differences, but it might rather be something that you add to your survey instrument after you ask the adapted or modified Trompenar's questions to determine cultural differences or cultural perspectives in addition to the Trompenar's questions, right? I mean, if they're talking about what it's like to be in Korea, you can also put in what it's like to be in Korea in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic. Although the pandemic has been going on long enough that the people that come to Korea to study, they came here during the pandemic and they're going back to their home countries, France or Belgium or Germany or Italy, wherever, during the pandemic. So the pandemic is the pandemic. That's all these international students know in terms of the international study experience, right? Studying in South Korea while having to wear a mask all the time and having to be on Zoom. You know, and so you can't really compare differences before and after pandemic with those students because those students are too young, right? I don't think any of them were studying abroad before the pandemic because the pandemic began 2 years ago, over 2 years ago. So, but still, I mean, it would be interesting to see how you can investigate the impact of the pandemic on the study abroad experience and any kind of information or knowledge that we might gain from the pandemic in terms of doing a better job in Catholic University of Korea in doing internet and providing international studies opportunities for French students, Italian students, Chinese students, Indonesian, or any international student to come study in Korea, even though we all still dealing with the pandemic. And, you know, even when the pandemic is officially over, the virus is not going away, right? It's like going to be like the cold virus, the flu virus. It's too infectious. So it's always going to be here. It's just that at some point we won't have to be wearing these all the time, But it's always going to be some kind of an issue. So it would be interesting to think about that, particularly, this is again, just my personal view. My sense is that the university administration is really dealing with this as a crisis in terms of being successful and attracting students to come here. The pandemic has, of course, made it even more of a challenge in coming up with strategies for the future of the university in terms of attracting students, Korean students and international students. So if you have if your research can provide us with some knowledge and some insights in terms of dealing with these challenges, that would be beneficial to you and me and the university. Okay, so all right, so let's we have a debate today, and we'll do the debate, and but we should cover some of the notes. And so where did we finish last time? Yeah, the book is an introduction to doing qualitative research and research in general. And keep in mind, when you finish at the end of your 4-year degree here, you're going to be expected to do a thesis. Now, I don't know if the thesis that you do is expected to involve research, like you have to go out and interview people for your thesis. My sense is the limited theses I've looked at, because I've been asked to read theses that were written in English, that they're not very elaborate. They don't typically involve going out and interviewing people. But if you do a master's thesis, you will be expected to do research. And then if you want to become a professor, you need to do a PhD, which has got to involve research. And my experience has been that those students who have experience with research, undertaking research designs and a research project and analyzing the data before they enter a PhD program, a doctoral program, they have an advantage. You know, writing my dissertation when I was in graduate school over 30 years ago, I had never had to write a thesis before. I never had to do a research project, and it was quite a daunting challenge when, you know, I took lots of classes, and then when I finished my classes, the professor said, okay, write a book, do some research and write a book on that research. And I had no idea, because I had never really done it. I'd taken lots of classes. I wrote long research papers for my courses, but I never undertook a field study before. I never went out and interviewed people as part of a research project. So this is useful introduction, particularly if you think you want to become a researcher as a professional, right? And because typically if you need to get a PhD, you're going to have to do a research project. And the more experience you get before you do a PhD, the better. So, so research design, that's a term that's always thrown around. What's the research design? Research design means the entire process of research, from conceptualizing a problem to writing research questions, like you know, what, yes. Oh, thank you. A research design involves in the entire process of conceptualizing a problem to writing research questions, like what are you going to investigate? What are you attempting to reveal, and how are you going to gather the data to answer those research questions, and how are the interview questions or survey instruments that you are using, how is that going to generate valid, good data versus just bad data? How are you going to analyze the research data? And then you have to interpret it, and then you have to report it in writing. So this is a term that you'll encounter if you go to graduate school. What is your research design? What is your research design? What is your research design? And so we talked about positioning ourselves in terms of being sure in terms of qualitative research that we are engaged in gathering enough data and information. Typically, as I mentioned, if it's possible to do interviews and record them, that's good. But be prepared that people are going to be a little cautious if you want to record what they have to say, particularly about sensitive, controversial issues. Because if they're recorded, that's why, typically, you can convince them that you are doing the research and you're being overseen by your university, that if you do not keep them anonymous, that if you do something that you promised not to do, like reveal who they are to other people, they'll get in trouble. Because I would get in trouble because my research design was approved by the Institutional Review Board. And I promised in this Institutional Review Board application that I would keep the interviewees, the people I'm interviewing, anonymous. I would not reveal who they are. I would not share that with anybody. And then if I do, I get in trouble and the university gets in trouble. So you know that as the interviewee, which might make it a little bit easier for you to be willing to talk openly and be recorded by the interviewer. And as I said, typically you want to gather text, you want to get the interview down in recording, and then you want to write out the words in the interview. And that typically takes a lot of time, and it has to be done. And there has been lots of software that's become available over the last 20 years to make this easier, but you have to pay for this transcription service. So for example, if you do interviews of people on Zoom and you interview them over Zoom and you record the interview, which you can do, you can record like I do here, like I'm recording this class right now. You can then send the audio file of the recording of the audio to different companies and use their transcription service, and they will convert the audio file of the interview into words for you, into printed text words. And then you can, and rather than having to listen to the interview and write down, with a pen what they said, like we used to have to do years ago. And then you can even also use software that can then help you analyze the words by counting the words, looking for specific words, looking for themes, helping you organize the text that you find that you have from the interview, to organize the text into themes. There's lots of software available, but of course you have to pay for it. But it's nice. So they highlight that in the chapter. And if I open up the lesson plan, I think I have those. I think you can see this, right? Like here is. I think I have the websites. I haven't checked these. Here's one, right? En Vivo. I mean, that's a very popular data analysis. This is a qualitative data analysis computer software package produced by QSR International, which helps qualitative researchers to organize, analyze, and find insights in unstructured qualitative data like interviews, open-ended survey question responses. Open-ended survey question responses, when I ask you a question and you just respond freely with as many words as you want. Again, so it's not like, do you like Moon Jae-in, yes or no? Instead, what are your views about the impact of the pandemic on your experience as a college student? And you go on, blah, 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 blah. That's an open-ended survey response. And again, it's text, journal articles, social media, and web content. And these levels of analysis are small and large volumes of data are required. I think the university has a license to this software. QSR International is based, I think, in Australia. It's got your survey data has got to be, your interview data has got to be in English, Chinese, Japanese, German, Portuguese, Spanish. They don't yet have it available in Korean language, I think. So that's one example of a very popular form of qualitative data analysis computer software. It just basically helps you organize the text of the data, the text of the interview that you have, so that you can begin to organize it and look for themes and that you can then analyze in interpreting the data. There is TranscribeMe is one of the many different services available by which you can You can, you record an interview on a smartphone, send the file to this company, and they'll download it, and it costs 79 cents a minute. So about 800 won a minute. I don't know how many minutes it takes to transcribe a page, but you can get, rather than having to listen and write out the words you hear, you can send it to somebody and but of course you have to pay for it. Other qualitative software. There's lots of different packages available. Let me see if I can see quality of data analysis, computer software. I'm looking to see if there's a link, because I know there is another Wikipedia site that is yeah, here's the here is the Wikipedia site for all of the different kinds of software data packages available. There's NVivo, but there are lots of them. I know a lot of students like this one, not a lot. I know I've had a few students use this Atlas TI. I've never used it. I don't know why they liked it better than NVivo. Yeah, so just so you can see. But before computer software, you would have to record the interview and then listen and write out the words from the interview, and then you do the direct physical process of reading and looking for themes in the interview text to come up with your data analysis. Okay, so philosophical assumptions and interpretive frameworks. And this is your introduction to the philosophy of science. Philosophy of science is an important topic. I went to the University of Pittsburgh for graduate school, and I finished at the beginning of the 1990s. University of Pittsburgh philosophy department is internationally known for its work in the history and philosophy of science. Like, what is science? What is the philosophy of science? What is scientific knowledge? That the philosophy department at the University of Pittsburgh is world renowned for that. So this was a big topic when I was studying there in the social science department. And so this is your introduction to the philosophy of science here in this book. This is just where it's first introduced. So to go on here, we as people always bring to our research certain beliefs and philosophical assumptions. They emerge, for example, about the problems that are interesting to us or that motivate us to do this kind of work, what kind of research questions we ask, and how to go about gathering the data. We develop beliefs about how to do research and what is real social science from these beliefs from our classes and professors, from the articles and books we read, and through academic groups with whom we associate. So this can be controversial. I mean, social scientists, academics in general, they often fight with each other because they have strong fundamental disagreements about valid theoretical frameworks for understanding reality. Like people who are Marxists versus people who are realists in international relations, my area, versus people that are feminists or constructivists. And these are all talked about in the textbook. And, people that go into this kind of work, they tend to be unusual people. Everybody's unusual, but when you make a commitment to a theoretical framework, it becomes your way of understanding your life, why you exist as a researcher. I claim to be generating truth as a researcher. And if I have a disagreement with other people, other professors, it implies that maybe I'm wrong and they're right, or they're right, they're wrong and I'm right. And I'm teaching you. Am I teaching you the truth, or am I brainwashing you without maybe even being aware that I'm brainwashing you to serve the interests of white racist male hegemony, or white male heterosexual patriarchy, or American imperialism? Is that what I'm doing right now without even knowing about it? And you can see how people become very emotional about these issues. So you should be aware of that. And when you become a PhD student and do your dissertation, make sure that the professors that you have on your committee who are going to review your PhD work, your PhD thesis, that they like each other. Because if they don't like each other because they have deep philosophical differences about what is the right and wrong way to do research and what is academic science, what is academic knowledge and what is scientific truth, they're not going to get along with each other, and they're not going to, it's going to impact how they evaluate your PhD dissertation work, because they can't agree themselves on what they want you to do. So we need to become aware of our assumptions so that we can discuss them with each other, and so that we can decide whether to incorporate them into research approach that we choose. And our respective philosophical views tend to determine the types of theories that we select to guide our research. So, you know, if I'm somebody who's kind of a cynical person who believes that, you know, might makes right, I might well be a realist in my theoretical framework. But if I'm somebody who is views myself like as being abused by the dominant powerful interests that rule our society, I'm going to be attracted to other theoretical frameworks that criticize the status quo and criticize the power structure and want to attack and undermine the existing power structure. We need to write explicitly about our philosophical views and beliefs, as well as about our theories that are driving our research. So we need to be explicit about our theoretical assumptions. And I just presented Trompenaars and Hampton framework, Trompenaars and Hampton Turner framework to you because it's a theoretical framework. But I already told you it's one theoretical framework. It's one of the core books that is used to teach about cultural differences in strategic management, but there are other books out there, right? I already mentioned the Hofstede book, and for example, is another perspective. And of course, they disagree with each other in terms of their theoretical frameworks for understanding culture and cultural differences in business administration. A close connection exists between our personal philosophy and our effort at research, including how we develop the framework that outlines our research effort. And so this chapter outlines the different philosophies that appear commonly in undertaking qualitative research. And so here are the theoretical questions for discussion. Where do philosophy and theoretical frameworks fit into the overall process of research? Why is it important to understand philosophical assumptions? What four philosophical assumptions exist when you choose qualitative research? How were these philosophical assumptions used and written into a qualitative study? What types of interpretive frameworks are used in qualitative research? And so on. How are interpretive frameworks written into qualitative study? How are philosophical assumptions and interpretive frameworks linked to in a qualitative study? So, and this is their point. Well, these are my comments, so I'm not going to really go into them here because a framework for understanding assumptions is a philosophical framework. A philosophy is defined as the use of abstract ideas and beliefs that inform our research. Typically, they are the first ideas in developing a study. So here is a figure from the book in terms of the research process. The researcher as a multicultural subject, you know, in terms of your conception of who you are and the conceptions of other people, the ethics and politics of research and history and research tradition, these you are drawn to. You learn about these and you learn to like some and dislike others through your college education. So these are pretty much set up and established for you as in the course of your choices when you're going through your undergraduate degree and your master's degree, right? And then you learn what you like and what you don't like, what attracts you and what does not attract you, what you want to do in this world and what is important to you. And that's going to shape the philosophical assumptions and theoretical frameworks that you're going to be attracted to when you become a researcher. And so, here you see some fancy words: philosophical assumptions and interpretive frameworks, your ontological assumptions. This is in terms of how you understand reality. Epistemological framework is your theories of knowledge. How do you know what is knowledge and what is not knowledge? How do you know information versus discriminate against? What do you think is not valid information? Axiological knowledges are principles, and methodological approaches are how you understand you should plan and do your research. And then these are the different theories that they've decided to introduce to you in qualitative research. You can see post-positivism, which means focused not so much on changing reality, rather in terms of understanding reality. Social constructivism is focused more on critical theory in terms of understanding people's assumptions that you want to critique. Transformative frameworks, postmodern perspectives, pragmatism, feminist theories, critical theory and critical race theory, queer theory, and disability theories. And so this, of course, in the United States has become a very controversial topic, critical race theory, because the belief by some conservative political leaders is that teachers in schools are being taught by college professors like me to view America as inherently a racist society based upon its foundation enslavement of Black African Americans, and that the entire social construction of the American state is built upon that foundation, and explains why America is inherently a society that disadvantages people who are not Caucasians, who are not European background, who have any evidence in how they appear and how and their culture of being African, because of the legacy of slavery in terms of affecting the development of the modern American state from the 400 years ago, from its founding in the beginning of the 17th century, in the colonies. This book came out in 2018. This whole explosion of a critical race theory, this is a big, big topic in American politics today. The research strategies and approaches, and these are all covered in the chapters here, right? So you're going to read about these designs, case studies, ethnographies, phenomenologies. We talked about that. Grounded theory, life history testimonies, that's narrative approach, or biographies as they used to be called. Historical method, action and applied research and clinical research. Again, these are research strategies and approaches. Methods of collection and analysis of data. You can observe, interview, artifacts. There's even references, for example, to doing studies of ethnography, in which you look at the artifacts that cultures produce, artifacts broadly understood, documents and records, visual methods, autoethnography, oral history, data management methods, computer-assisted analysis, textual analysis, focus groups, and applied ethnography. So those software programs, they fit here under computer-assisted analysis. And then phase 5 in the research design, the art, practice, and politics of interpretation and evaluation. You have to still bring yourself into this research. You have to interpret the data. And your interpretation is just as interesting or as important as the data itself. And that's important. So again, phase 1, and we're running out of time here. You bring your history to this, your own personal history to the phase 1 in terms of what you're choosing to study, your views about yourself and others on a deep personal level. You bring up your own history, political or ethical issues or views to bear and in your choices. In phase 2, you bring your theoretical frameworks or paradigms or perspectives. I mean, my theoretical framework or paradigm is more political psychology, right? Paradigms are a broad term that means are a basic set of beliefs that guides action. Like Marxists tend to assume that human social evolution is driven by class interest, and class conflict, for example. So that's a basic set of beliefs that guides action in terms of understanding what's guiding the action of human society. Again, these are just my comments, BD, so I'm not going to go into that because we're running out of time. Theories or theoretical orientations, they provide a general explanation as to what the researcher hopes to find in a study, or a lens through which to view the needs of participants and communities in a study. So from, again, Marxism to feminism to queer theory to, people, I mean, there was this morning a Zoom session from Berkeley, University of California, Berkeley, by a Russian author who just did a queer theory study about homosexuality in Russia. And I guess those people are making an argument that since so much of human social interaction is driven by gender and sexual and the pursuit of intimate relations with other people, that we can get lots of insights into, for example, understanding conflict in international relations like war through understanding these deep drives that relate to masculinity versus femininity versus non-binary identity. So, I mean, some of these approaches they're looking at trying to find fundamental drivers explaining the problems, the challenges, the injustices, and the suffering of people today. And then in phase 3, the researcher then chooses the research approaches. In phase 4, the researcher engages in methods of data collection analysis. And phase 5, the researcher inquiry then engages in interpretation and evaluation of the data. So we're sort of helping you out here in terms of suggesting that since you're doing your midterms on Entrepreneurs and Hampton Turner, and you've been studying that's your theoretical framework for this class. But there are lots of theoretical frameworks that you can choose from. But that is an important point. If you're going to do your own research, you have to write that product up of your analysis. You write up your analysis, and you have to persuade me and other scholarly readers that your research and your findings are useful or good. And that means, like I always tell you in doing the paragraphs for each week, you have to use and cite specific information from scholarly peer-reviewed sources to support, develop, and refine your points in order to have a possibility of persuading me that what you are writing as a truth claim is in fact true. If you don't use and cite specific information from other scholarly peer-reviewed sources, then it's just opinions. And I don't care about opinions. I don't want to read opinions. I want to read what you claim is the truth, a truth claim, a thesis that you then support with evidence. And that evidence is scholarly peer-reviewed information. In other words, it's information that was published in a book or a journal article that went through the peer review process. Like I told my, I'm going to have to shut down this computer because I need to open up my laptop.